All right, welcome everybody. We're going to get started. We have some hefty agendas. So we're going to turn it over to Commissioner Ziegmanfeld, but not before I say, and I'll say it at the end also, go Birds.
I don't know what that has to do with me, but okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll open receipt of monthly reports and citizen committee meeting minutes. We'll take items 1A, B, and C, January 2021-25 Highway Department Report, December 2024 Refuse and Recycling Department Report, and January 2025 Parks Maintenance Department reports. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? I see none, so I'll move approval to accept the minutes from those three meetings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item D, January 2025 Street and Traffic Light Superintendent Report. And Mr. Stuckert, I do have a question on one of the items in your extensive report, the Green Light Go project for New Second and Coventry. There was an increased cost from $789,000 to $1,024,000, which is a $235,000 increase. I was wondering what's the nature of the increase, and of that, how much will be on the township?
Right. So that was based on the review from PennDOT. They came back with in their comments that in order for us to move forward and apply for the Green Light Go and for it to be considered, we must provide a pedestrian path between that corner and the path that is on the other side of the waterway there. And to do that, we would have to probably either replace part of PennDOT's stormwater line there that crosses New Second and Coventry, and make adjustments to the head wall, or put in some type of pedestrian walkway across the water separate from that. So that is the lesser of two evils that we looked at, and the engineers put that number together based on that. Like I said, we received the comments back beginning of last week. We discussed it. We had follow up with the state because we were concerned about their comments, and they came back and said, yes, we will not even consider it unless you have some kind of pedestrian connection there.
So given that those are being imposed on us by the conditions by PennDOT, are they willing to pony up any money, or is this going to be all on the township?
No. So we're going for grants again, and it would be an 80-20 match. So
Okay.
if we get the full grant, they would pay for 80% and we would pay for 20% of that.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Stuckert. That was my question. Does anybody else on staff on board have questions about the extensive elements on the January 2025 Street and Traffic Light Superintendent Report?
Yes.
Commissioner, wait, I see a couple of hands. I'm going to go to Commissioner Rappaport first. I saw that finger waving.
Okay, thank you very much. So could you maybe remind us, there is a part of the report where it talked about easements at the Church Road and Washington Lane intersection. And I know we've been talking about a possible road diet, but I don't think that's what's going on. So what is that about? Remind us.
That intersection is one of 4 intersections under an Arley grant for a pedestrian and preemption upgrade. So we needed the easements in order to move forward.
Right. Okay.
And a lot of help from Mr. Diazio on attaining those easements and right away. So I want to thank him, but that's what those were for.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Norris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe, am I correct that the New Second and Coventry work, frankly, as well as the others, that we will not proceed on these unless we get the GO grants?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. With those additions or questions, I'll move for approval of the January 2025 Street and Traffic Light Superintendent Report. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item E is the January 2025 Fleet Superintendent Report. So I'll move. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? I'll move for those to be approved. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item F is the January 2025 Stormwater Coordinator Report. And Ms. Brinker, I do have one question. In that report, I don't see any continuing mention of the Army Corps of Engineers project. Is that now off of our radar? Are we going to bring ourselves back to that and try and start to reschedule meetings and the possibilities of at least bringing 2 of those 6 basin projects back on board?
Yeah, we are continuing discussions with DEP. We are also looking into different grants we can do to get funding for ourselves that way as well, so that we can continue looking into those basins.
Okay, great. So I do want us to try and get back in front of them just to see if, if we have a reduced ambition from the 6 and we have the 2 priority projects, if we can restore that funding as well as look for other funding. So thanks. And I'd like, we've talked about getting together. So I'd like to do that in fairly short order as we start to go after money from all different sources. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions or comments on item F, the Stormwater Coordinator Report?
If I can just jump in a little bit.
Thanks, Allison. Go ahead.
Sam did a great job. Just wanted to add that one of the things that we can look at with the Army Corps also is looking at those basins and maybe kind of reconfiguring them to something that makes a little more sense for us and meeting additional goals other than what the Army Corps could do at maybe different costs. So it's definitely something on Sam and I have been talking about on how do we reconfigure that and reimagine those projects.
Great, particularly in the context of all the obligations that we're looking at from the county, Wissahickon, and for the township, all those plans. So if we can orchestrate and coordinate and get funding that covers those from any source, I think that's really great. So good. I'm glad to hear that. And that's important. So again, I'll move for the approval of Stormwater Coordinator Report. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
Aye.
Item G, Shade Tree Advisory Committee, January 9th meeting. Are there any questions or comments on that? So I'll move for approval of that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And item H is the Environmental Advisory Council meeting from January 13th. There will be an item in new business that we will add to our discussion on the issue of single-use plastics that include things like styrofoam and plastic straws, but we'll hold that for new business. So if there aren't any questions on the EAC report, I'll move for that to be approved as well. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We'll go to item 2, old business. And first item A is the final deer management report for 2024-25. And I see Chris is here. So you want to just give us a summary, Chris?
Yes. I gave you guys a breakdown of the number of deer that were culled from the different locations. I don't know if you want me to go through that point by point. But the grand total for the township was 67 for the season, which is significantly higher than any other year. There were 9 deer donated to the Hunters for the Harvest program. It was 351 pounds of meat which equated to 1,404 individual meals, which is pretty significant. So it was a productive season. It was safe, mostly positive interactions with the residents. A lot of people that really don't even support hunting had conversations and said, yeah, but we totally understand it. Like, we have to do something. They were very thankful. So, do you guys have any questions?
Chris, I did have one question. That is, with the expanded territories, is that part of the reason why you had the increased number of deer culled?
I think that helped. Yeah,
Okay.
I definitely think it helped. If you see the category for private on there, I think that was 19 deer that got taken. We had a lot of residents reach out to us as far as, if we could hunt their property, where we could safely do so and legally do so. We were able to do that. That helped bump the numbers up. So I really want to thank the guys, because especially when the weather starts turning and it gets cold out, it's miserable. You know, people don't understand it, but you can sit for hour after hour after hour and not see a single deer. It doesn't seem like it because they're everywhere, but not when you're out there. Not when you're out there trying to cull them.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions or comments from members of Jeff? Go ahead. Commissioner Cherko.
Hey, Chris, thank you for a job well done this year, and thank you for your work on this. And yeah, I think it's a valuable service, and I have had interactions and just walking through with different hunters, and they've always been kind and polite, and recognize the concern that some residents may have. My only suggestion would, I think, coming into next year, is to maybe we can just do take a look at the signage again. I know you guys were really responsive when I asked you to put the Sunday, no Sunday hunting, but a lot of folks that I have spoken to in the area, and I live over in the 3rd Ward, and so the main hunting place near us is that trail that connects Serpentine to Spring, and a lot of confusion about when people can walk and when they can't. And maybe we can just next year maybe kind of take a closer look at how we can make that a little bit clearer for people to understand, because I had gotten some feedback from people about that. So, but thank you for your work and for a job well done. And yeah, maybe next year we can kind of, when we look at it, we can maybe powwow about what might be the best and clearest way to get that message across.
Yeah, we'll try to get the ball rolling, take a couple months off, maybe April or May, we'll get with you guys, and rather than the 11th hour, we'll get it all hammered out ahead of time and make sure we're squared away.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thanks for your help there.
Great job,
I
Chris.
know the
Thank
whole
you.
board appreciates what you've done.
Yeah.
You and the whole team, Chris. So thank
Great
you.
job, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's move to item B, which is review and consider recommending the Board of Commissioners approve SEPTA's detours for the Easton Road and Keswick Avenue bridge replacement and repair projects. There is an attachment, and I'll put this in the hands of the local commissioner, Mr. Arman, and or if Mr. Stuckert also has an extensive document. And I believe we even have a representative of SEPTA here as well. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Cherko and I followed up with SEPTA earlier this week, or excuse me, last week, in response to a lot of the concern that had been expressed by this board, by staff, and by the public about number one, sort of not the best communication leading up to this project, and also the notion of adjusting the time frame. And I think we had a very productive meeting with some recognition that of areas for improvement in the communication and the relationship between SEPTA and the township. And unfortunately, despite our efforts to try and adjust the time frame, there are just other projects that are taking place in the Glenside area between Ward 1, Ward 2, and Ward 4, I believe, that unfortunately are going to prevent SEPTA from adjusting the time frame. That being said, they have committed to restricting the overall time of the work that's going to be done to 6 weeks, and have committed to limiting that closure on Easton Road to 6 weeks. They've committed to regular communications bi-weekly of status updates that are going to go both to the township and to the Downtown Glenside Foundation. And Allison, in that vein, I should say Manager Elliott, in that vein, it'd be my hope that we could put those updates up on our website in a dedicated spot for the Easton Road project. So those will be bi-weekly updates. And there's going to be two critically important components to this project. That one is that there will always be a sidewalk access underneath the bridge for pedestrians, whether it's both sidewalks or one. There will always be access for residents, visitors, business owners to walk under the bridge even while the construction's going on. And SEPTA and the contractor have committed to include signage that will identify the open sidewalk, will identify that the businesses are open, and identify those businesses by name. So the Downtown Glenside Foundation is currently coordinating to identify all the businesses that want to be listed. That information will be communicated to SEPTA and placed on the signage during the construction. All of which I think, while not perfect, is going to certainly help minimize the impact of the road closure over that period of time. And again, I want to thank Commissioner Cherico for his efforts. And I'll with all that, I will say that representatives from SEPTA did agree to come to this meeting again to answer questions. So with that introduction, I'm happy to turn it over to them if they want to add anything or highlight anything.
So
Bob, Kent.
go ahead if SEPTA's here and just wants
There it
to share some information.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Ehrman. I mean, Commissioner Ehrman pretty much covered everything. And let me also say, I want to, Wendy sends her regards. Wendy, unfortunately, due to that plane crash in Northeast Philadelphia, she had to attend another meeting this evening. So she was unable, she had planned on being on this meeting, but unfortunately she's unable to because she's attending that meeting. So she does send her regards and does apologize for not being on this meeting this evening. But I think Commissioner Ehrman did pretty much sum up everything. We did have a very productive call, late last week to discuss the situation. And, as he pointed out, while, the communication wasn't perfect and then we tried to, look at other things. It's just not possible to move it, but we have committed to the things that Commissioner Ehrman outlined in terms of communication as well as the signage and keeping access to pedestrians on at least one of the sidewalks. And I have Kyle Stanley is on this call as well. If Kyle wants to add anything, I'll pass it on to Kyle.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, and I also second your Commissioner Ehrman basically stating all that we've committed to do that. And I hope that this kind of brings us closer and we'll get this job done and we'll get the road back and restored and the bridge in a state of good repair. I appreciate your consideration.
So Commissioner,
All that is appreciated. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say all that is appreciated and is set forth in the letter that was attached to the packets that was addressed to the township. So we appreciate that commitment from SEPTA, and I'll turn it back over to the chair for continuation of the discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Ehrman, and thank you, representatives from SEPTA. The one thing I'd say is that kind of changes the nature of this recommendation because the discussion and the information in the letter goes well beyond just the detours for the Easton and Keswick Avenue bridge replacement. So I think we almost want to expand it to, a conditional approval for the entire project with obvious need to have timely reporting and timely communications. So I think that's an important addition to not just talking about the detour, but also talking about a broader scope of this particular recommendation. Any issue with that, Commissioner Ehrman, Commissioner Cherico?
Go ahead.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, listen, I'm a year in. I don't know if that's necessary. I think what they definitely need is a vote on allowing the detours. I don't know that we need to tie in the other things that they agreed to. I mean, I think for me, I believe them, take them at their word that they're going to do these things, but I could be wrong. And Commissioner Ehrman, perhaps you have a different opinion.
No, I agree. I think the vote would be to recommend to approve the detours and with the commitment set forth in writing that they will comply with all the items that they've mentioned in their letter.
All right, so I'll close comment and move that we review and we consider recommending that we approve the SEPTA detour for the Easton Road and Keswick Avenue bridge replacement. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can we,
Thank you.
one thing, do we have an exact date, an exact start date yet? The letter, I don't think the letter, if I'm correct, identified an exact start date and maybe I overlooked it.
and Kyle can correct me, but Commissioner Cherico, I believe it's right around March 17th or 18th is the start, and then we'd be complete by the end of April, which then would be enough time for the Cheltenham Arts Festival.
Okay.
I also like that, and we appreciate the consideration and potential approval of the detour for Easton Road. I know that I think there was less, I guess, consternation regarding the Keswick project. That's a full replacement, and that's the last week of May, first week of June.
Right. Yeah, that one's listed in the letter.
Yeah, that's also listed. And there's a lot of things listed about that. And of course, we'll be in touch about that project as we get closer. I mean, that won't be included in these early communications, where these early communications through February, March, and April are strictly going to be with Easton. And then, in May, as we get closer, we'll begin communications regarding the Keswick Avenue replacement. I will say once we have, I'm going to follow up with the contractor confirming the dates and times of the work and all that. We hope to have some type of communication out to the township and the businesses between now and the end of February. So, you have that, you'll have that notice prior to the project beginning. And then once the project begins, as Commissioner Araman stated, and as was agreed upon between the township and SEPTA, once the project begins, we will have bi-weekly updates. But prior to that, we will have some type of communication for you, which should be before the end of the month, kind of outlining everything. But again, it'll just be related to, Easton Road. It'll have the detour information and all that. Obviously, with the conditional approval of the detour by the board. So we certainly appreciate your time and consideration.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mr. Ken. Okay, so I'll move to item C and have an update on the Elkins Estate Land Development Project, 1750 Ashburn Road, and I assume there is somebody here to represent that interest.
Good evening, everyone. Amy Farrell with Kaplan Stewart. I do also have with me John Mazza, who's with Black Dog Construction. Black Dog is the construction arm of Landmark Development, and he can answer any other questions we may have as well. I have a quick sort of 3-slide update for you just to give you a sense of where we are and what next steps look like. So if I'm okay to share my screen, I'll go ahead and it says sharing not turned on.
I think you should be able to share now, Amy.
Okay, great, thanks. There we go. So hopefully you can all see that. Obviously all well aware of the Elkins Estate and the prior approvals. So what we wanted to do tonight was just give you an update on where we are with respect to the status of the various components of this site. So the work that has been completed to date, subject to all of the approvals that we've received, the entire parcel has been consolidated into a single parcel as part of the deed, which was a requirement of our zoning. Preservation easements to preserve and maintain the exteriors of all of the historic buildings have been recorded with the county recorder's office. So that's all of the main portion of Elstow, Chelten House, the distillery, the cottages throughout, the gatehouses along the perimeter, all are permanently protected by preservation easements now. There's also a restrictive covenant or deed restriction that prevents future residential development of the site. That was also recorded at the time of plan recording. So once again, the site, with the exception of the couple of existing artists' apartments on site that were approved as part of zoning, this site now is subject to a restrictive covenant for any future residential development. We entered into a lease with the local nonprofit Farmer John. For any of you that know Farmer John, that lease commenced with her, and she's done a tremendous amount of work and improvement in and around the greenhouse areas to support the greenhouses and the gardens, and she runs part of her nonprofit farming operation from there. The sewer EDU agreement and the final approval for sewer EDUs from DEP and Aqua, which was a little more than a 2-year process, was finalized in August of 2023. So that was a long lead item for us in terms of being able to really move on to the next component of improvements. In parallel with that, the interior renovations of the Elstow Manor, so the main building on site, have been completed, and the on-site events have been commenced. So all of the event spaces within the Elstow Manor have been completed. There are also the interior renovations that were to convert what we called the Elstow Manor Annex into hotel rooms have also been completed. Those hotel rooms right now, because of the limited operation presently on site, are really provided as an amenity to the events themselves. So the hotel is not fully operational to the public yet, but is available for events as events are scheduled. There also are that we're, just for reference for everybody, we are in tax year 4 as of 2024 of the TIF plan. This was the first year that the taxing authorities started to receive tax payments under that TIF plan. And those tax payments run for years 4 through 10. Years 11 through 20 are then tied to some percentages as to total tax revenue. So the tax outlook changes a bit starting in year 11, but we are in the active tax payment portion of the TIF as of 2024. So there's some work in progress currently on site that's running through the spring of 2025. We have secured the permits for the preservation and renovation efforts within Chelten House. That will bring an additional 14 hotel rooms on board, as well as some conference space. There's tree trimming and branch removal underway really along the entire perimeter of the property to maintain the health of that perimeter canopy. There's a lot of old trees along there, as you can imagine, a fair amount of maintenance associated with that. John and his team have been working with the township over the last several months to identify where there's trees that either need trimming or some general maintenance to make sure that we're protecting not just the canopy, but the roadways along there. The preservation and repair of the perimeter stone walls is also underway. That will continue throughout the spring and perhaps beyond. As you can imagine, that's quite a meticulous process in order to preserve and maintain those walls. The teaching kitchen and the recording studio within Elstow are also under construction presently based on our current permits. And we're anticipating completion of those 2 spaces by April of this year. So by, we think, end of March, beginning of April. Those are both TIF amenities. So both the township and the school district then have a right to access those spaces for programming. So we will be reaching out in the coming months to start engaging both the township and the school district in those conversations about how and when you would like to use those spaces. We are the sort of big ticket item here in the work in progress portion is we are awaiting the closing date on the next funding tranche for the next phase of construction. We are anticipating also that closing will occur this spring. That will free us up then to start on the anticipated spring 2025 start for what you'll recall is largely what we were previously referring to as phase 1 and phase 2 of the site work for the Elkins Estate, as well as some of the additional building improvements. So everything that you see here in green, this sort of light green, gets touched as part of this next phase. So the interior improvements to Chelten House would continue. That's again the conference space and the completion of an additional 14 hotel rooms there. The preservation and renovation of the former stables into a distillery space with aging rooms and an event space. There are 5 existing cottages, you'll remember, sort of tucked in through the site. Those also are renovated as part of this next phase. And then the phase 1 and 2 site work, which is one of the biggest pieces of site work. It's the realignment of this entry driveway to center it on the Elstow's main entrance and move it a little bit further away from the existing intersection there. It's new parking, about 117 parking spaces along the Chelten Hills, or the Chelten House, excuse me, perimeter, and then an additional about 54 parking spaces that are brought online as part of the distillery improvements. Throughout this portion of the site, there's a tremendous amount of garden and walking path improvements that are also part of the record plan that will be happening as part of that phase. We'll also be coordinating again with the township and the school district. If you'll recall, another TIF amenity was use of those gardens as part of a sculpture and art presentation in cooperation with the developer, the township, and the school district. So there will be the potential for both the township and the school district to identify local artists who you may want to showcase throughout those sculpture gardens. That's really the big piece that's coming online this year. And that will, this is the better part of a year, I think, to really get all of this up and running. Future phases beyond that then are what you see not shaded on here, that 205 additional parking spaces adjacent to Elstow, the eventual renovation of the former retirement home as a spa and conference center, and the third floor addition to the Elstow annex. If you recall, there was an additional, I want to say it was 27 hotel rooms that were proposed for that third floor addition. So that addition wouldn't happen as part of what you're seeing shaded in green here. That would be something we'd come back to a little bit later. So that's really where we are. And again, certainly happy to answer any questions. I can stop sharing if that's easier or leave it up in case anybody has questions, your choice.
I'll ask if any member of the board has questions for Ms. Farrell or for the owners if they are in fact here. I can't see because
I do.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for
Hi.
coming today.
Sure.
Obviously, we didn't get to work together since I replaced someone you worked closely with when presenting this, but I do want to say how excited I am to have this development in my ward. I love walking past it and seeing the progress that's being made, and I'm really looking forward to this next phase. So thank you very much for that. You didn't, I don't think you mentioned, if you did, forgive me for missing it. There wasn't any mention of a restaurant. And I thought that was something that was in the initial plans.
Yes, so that's a great question, and thanks for pointing that out. So in the plans, part of the original proposal for Elstow House is to have a full service restaurant eventually. That is still very much within Landmark's long-term plan. There's a couple of items that have pushed that, I would say, further down the line in terms of when it might come online. The primary one being sewer. We spent a little over 2 years with the DEP and Aqua working through sewer capacity and availability of EDUs based on the township's connection management plan. And the restaurant, were it to have come online early, restaurants just by their nature chew up a tremendous amount of EDUs and would have really stunted the ability to bring the hotel rooms, for example, online. And the bank, so the second piece of it is the bank and the financing. And so, of course, this all happened. We sort of got our approvals in 2020 and then COVID hit and it changed the environment, right? And banks are very different in terms of the way that they are funding now, the amount of funds they're releasing at a time and what they're releasing those for. They're looking much more carefully at what you're funding each time. Okay. And the bank was very concerned in the first, what we'll call the first renovation phase, the Elstow Manor renovation phase, that there was a tremendous amount of effort put into this beautiful space and no high quality hotel rooms in the immediate area that would match that space. And they were very concerned that it was going to get very difficult very quickly to book any kinds of events in that space if there wasn't sort of a commensurate scale and style of hotel available. And so they pushed as part of the funding agreement to kind of shift some of the hotel work sooner. So that's why you saw, as part of the Elstow renovations, the first phase of the hotels, hotel spaces within that annex coming on board. And then as part of this next phase, they're really pushing for Chelten House because they want those additional hotel rooms as well. So I wish I had a better answer on the hotel, or excuse me, on the restaurant. We would love it to be there sooner. I, as a township resident, would absolutely love it to be there sooner. Sure. But it's a little bit of a, banks look at those as lost leaders. You don't generally make money on the restaurant. So they're going to want to see sort of longer period of time here over the next year or so of consistent rental before they're willing to look at it. The other thing that does for us by allowing it to kind of string out a little bit longer is it gives us real-time water data that we can take back to DEP to then be able to show that we do have enough capacity within what's been granted, or if it needs to be amended, we can be very specific about what that amendment needs to be in terms of BDUs.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mhm.
Just a couple other questions. You had said that the entry realignment, is that going to impact the placement of the wall, of the gates, anything like?
It does, yes. It basically, if you could imagine, sort of picks them all up and moves them closer to the post office, right? So very meticulous process involved there. I think if you've seen, certainly with the work that's been done at Elkins Estate, Landmark and Black Dog they're very, very cognizant of the historic nature of those pieces. And so they're committed to saving all of that, realigning it, relocating it. And when they're done, the intent is that it's going to look like it's always been where we've landed it. It's not going to look any different.
There is a section of that wall close on Juniper, close to Ashbourne, that has been crumbling since since I've lived here. I'm guessing that section perhaps hasn't been fixed, probably because that's part of the section that might be moved. Am I?
Yeah, a good piece of that will come out entirely, which will actually help with those sight lines along there. So there was some initial efforts to kind of shore up that piece a bit. I think as part of the improvements in general that are being made to the wall around the perimeter, they'll go back and look at that again and see what they can do, at least in the short term. But ultimately that piece does come down and gets moved.
And my final is more of a comment and not directed at you, but perhaps you can take it to the necessary people. So far we appreciate you in this development as being our neighbor. However, I do find that there are some spots where Landmark is not the neighbor that we had hoped. And both of them are involving the maintenance of the property outside the walls. They don't do a very good job raking leaves, keeping the sidewalks clear, and they don't shovel the sidewalks. And in the most recent storm where we had 4 inches, whatever it was, I saw a little old lady walking, right in front of, but was walking in the street because she couldn't walk on the sidewalk in front of the gates. And that's just unacceptable. There are rules in the township that need to be followed. And I am really not pleased when we have a company like Landmark who can't do what the rest of us do and make sure that there's someone that they contract with to clear those sidewalks, so that the residents can pass safely and not walk along Juniper or Ashbourne and risk their lives. So if there is a message that you could take back to the owner and say, if he needs names of people who can shovel, I'm happy to provide them. So I just don't know. I don't know why that's not being done. And after 5 years, you'd think that he would maybe have someone contracted to handle that. And so I would really encourage that maybe that be looked at and be focused on to be a good neighbor to the rest of us.
Thank you, Commissioner Chirico.
And John just hopped in here too, and he can give you a bit more detail on that. We have met with the township on that recently. I will also say there was a site superintendent on site who was responsible for those things and is no longer with us. So and not we have parted ways, I should say, not no longer. I don't want to imply that he's no longer with us globally, but he's no longer with Landmark.
I understood what you meant.
Good evening, everyone. So yes, so I had a call with Scott Lynch earlier in the week. Actually last week regarding the sidewalks. Those will be addressed immediately. We are already working on the walls because I agree that the walls are in bad shape. So and once they become a hazard to the public, it's something that needs to be done. So we're absolutely on that. Our teams are already knowing that the first order of business in a snowstorm is to do the outside. And we also put the landscaping of it in their repertoire. So awesome. That'll all be getting done.
I appreciate that very much. And thank you for being at this meeting. You didn't have to, and I appreciate your.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thank you. Commissioner Norris. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Amy, very informative report. Thank you. Just a question. The events, how many events took place in 2024 and how many are scheduled for 2025?
John, do you know those numbers? That's usually Jeannie. I don't actually have those numbers.
I actually am sorry. I build stuff for a living. I don't know, but we can get back to you. Right, Amy? We'll
sure. Yeah, we can get those numbers over to you. We'll find out for sure.
To you.
Is it can you state, has it been successful as far as booking events? Are you pleased with the amount of events you've been booking?
Yes, I think I would say, generally speaking, Frank and Jeannie have been very, very pleased with the way it's been going. They went into this knowing it's a slow build, and this is a very unique space. So, you know, you're only going to get sort of certain types of events that, you know, that want to and can be in a space of this size and at this level. But they are very pleased with the way it's been going. The bank is as well, which is why we're seeing the willingness to release that next round of funding. So I think that in and of itself is a really good indicator that it's going as they anticipated it would, because the bank is now in an otherwise tough lending market, ready to release a pretty substantial amount for the next phase.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. And I would just add, we are eager to have the restaurant as soon in the future as is possible.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I see Commissioner Sekawango has his hand raised as well.
Sorry if I'm intruding, but
You're
I
not
just had
the
a
modem.
Henry.
I just had a quick question for Amy. I'm not sure, I didn't hear you say anything about it, but there was an inquiry about off-site improvements, specifically the Old York Road and Ashbourne Road. Is there any updates on that? I know PennDOT is trying to do some improvements at that intersection, and the traffic engineer for Elkins was to reach out to them. I'm not sure if that's also happened.
Yes, so that has happened. They are in conversation to try to coordinate the timing of our improvements and PennDOT's improvements, if that can all happen at once. There's a limited amount of improvements that Landmark is required to do at that intersection that have to do with some signal timing and I think some pedestrian crossings. PennDOT has a larger project going there, so we don't want to put improvements in only to have PennDOT immediately take them out. So we're trying to work through the timing of that. But yes, there are ongoing discussions with PennDOT about that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the board or adjunct members of the board? I see none. So I'll move till we close that. Are there any other items for old business for the February Public Works? I see none, so I will close all business.
Great.
And
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you,
everyone.
Amy. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Amy.
Thank you.
Great. I'll open up new business on item A. Consider recommending the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution granting conditional approval and associated waivers for a preliminary final land development application, CTDA number 24-06 for the Cedarbrook Shopping Plaza located at 1000 South Easton Road, Cheltenham, PA, for the proposed construction of a 4,275 square foot bank building with a drive-through facility in place of an existing drive-through ATM structure. There is a link, and I assume, Mr. Sekawango, that you're on with this as well?
Yes, I can do a quick brief introduction. Again,
Thank you.
This property has gone through an extensive review process as part of the proposed construction of this commercial facility. They've gotten all the necessary recommendations with conditions, and I'll just go ahead and turn it to Matt or David for additional input.
Yeah, I'll start it off. Good evening, everybody. I'm Matt Landro from Bowler Engineering, engineer for the project. I'll start by saying go Birds as well. And also, pardon my voice, I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold, so bear with me on that. So thanks, Henry and Mr. Chairman, for the introduction. We're here to present just our proposed development at the Cedarbrook Shopping Plaza for a new bank improvement at the corner of Cheltenham Avenue and the easternmost egress driveway right across from where the new Chick-fil-A is located. So I have a set of plans here that I can open, and we can go through in a very high level if you'd like. I obviously want to respect everyone's time, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. So I
Can
guess
we do that at a high level?
yeah,
Be good. Okay.
happy to do it. All right, so just to quickly locate everybody, this is the Cedarbrook Shopping Plaza, which I assume everyone's quite familiar with. The southeast corner of the existing site along Cheltenham Avenue, which is along the bottom of the page, there is currently a remote ATM for Bank of America, which is going to be removed as part of this project. And in its place, we're putting a full branch. That's the proposal, is to do a full ground up new store for Bank of America, a little over 4,000 square feet. So I'll go to the plan next, so you have a little bit of a sense of scale on that. So really the proposal is to take that corner of the existing parking field and utilize it for something that's going to be beneficial. Currently, it's very underutilized. It's kind of just an area that gets hot and additional stormwater is generated, and we're able to make an improvement to that to not only utilize it for something positive, but also bring some value to not only the shopping center, but to the township in general. So along with the store itself, we're obviously providing some pedestrian connectivity to the street, which is a positive. There is a drive-through operation with this facility as well, which will be essentially 2 remote ATMs. It's not like you have the traditional chutes and pneumatic tube situation, but in this case, they'll just be drive-up ATMs that you can utilize like any other ATM. And then obviously, some additional landscaping and lighting improvements to service this use, since it is a bank, and there are, certain security measures that need to be put in place for that. So that's a very, very high level synopsis of what's being proposed here. We are proposing all internal utility connections to the shopping center, so we will not be entering Cheltenham Avenue to make those connections, which is also, I think, a positive. And from a stormwater management perspective, since we are providing this building within an existing impervious asphalt area, we don't really need any sort of stormwater management system to reduce any flows or provide water quality improvement. So the additional grass area is accomplishing that by itself. We did, as Henry mentioned, we have been in front of the Planning Commission and also the Shade Tree Advisory Commission. We've received recommendations from both of those boards, and with conditions that we intend to comply with, and we're hoping for the same tonight. So with that, I guess if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer it. I think we also have Laurie, who is a representative of the Cedarbrook Shopping Plaza, in case there's any questions associated with the project that I can't answer that maybe someone at the ownership level can. And we're excited to get this project through. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Mr. Landau. Commissioner Lewis, I believe this is in your ward. Do you have any questions or concerns here?
Sure is. Thank you. I'm always excited about new development and maximizing space for the good of the township. Henry, I reviewed the Bowman report, which was a very good report. Had 6 items for us to consider. I'm very interested in knowing what's our position on Bowman's recommendations, and if there's any updates on them.
Mr. Commissioner, I believe you're referring to the waiver request. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I'll turn it over to our township engineer to comment on those waivers and give us a recommendation.
Sure, thanks, Henry. Yeah, the applicant, as outlined in my letter, and Commissioner, this is the Gannett Fleming letter that was, I believe, posted on the township's website. I could share that if you would like, but the applicant has requested 10 waivers for this project, and I don't know if Matt, do you have your waiver letter handy?
Yeah, I can pull that up. I think we also have have them listed on our cover sheet of the plan.
Yeah,
set, so I can
if you can pull
this.
those waivers up, and
Is
if
that
you would,
readable for everybody?
yeah, that's that. I can see that well. If you can run through that and the reason
Sure.
why you're requesting each waiver.
Absolutely. So I'll just go one after the other here. So the first one is for sewer planning module that we are requesting a waiver from. There's some pretty detailed information that we provided to Mr. Phillips just about the anticipated flow that this use is going to generate, which is essentially negligible compared to what is currently servicing the development.
Yeah, and for the board's benefit, I can add to that we have had several discussions with the PADP, and we're awaiting their final response on this. So this waiver is just administrative. We anticipate that the DEP would issue their waiver of planning of this, so they can just move forward without the addition of any EDUs. So go ahead, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the context. And obviously, if there were any issues and the DP was not willing to support that, we would go down the appropriate paths. So that was just the most reasonable approach. The second one is a waiver to not require the 2-year storm to be reduced to the 1-year storm. And we ran the calculations and discussed this with Roger as well. And really the 2-year reduction is a drop in the bucket compared to the entire drainage area that the shopping center is contained within currently, and we are reducing the existing flow from existing to the proposed, just not quite from the 2-year to the 1-year. I believe it's like a 0.05% net difference. So in order to add that, it would require a lot of additional construction costs and improvements, and we don't think it's really going to provide any difference at the end of the day. So for that reason, we're requesting the waiver.
And the area of the site is now serviced from the existing system that's takes care of the rest of the shopping center, so it would have no impact.
Can we pause for a moment for a question from Commissioner Rappaport?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was looking at it more holistically. The waiver number 2, waiver number 3, request number 6 and 8, which all seem to pertain to stormwater and green space and plantings, all of that same kind of waiver. And you add those together, and I question, especially knowing that we've had issues with stormwater, that it is a huge issue for the township, that we're in climate crisis. It seems to me that those are a lot, I mean, maybe relative to something, but relative to the needs of the township, I don't see that those are negligible. So I'd sort of like to stick with our requirements on this.
So thank you for the feedback, and I think as we get to maybe some of those other items you mentioned on the list, there are some additional reasons for not providing a handful of these items. So I'd certainly appreciate the comment, and we would happy to discuss it further and see what we can do. But there are some additional constraints that we haven't discussed yet. So
right, and I know from having read it that we're also talking about what can be done on site, but there's always in lieu of, which will benefit the township. So when we get to those, I guess I'd like to see them as a unified development, not just piecemealing our way through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rappaport. You want to continue, Mr. Landau?
Sure. So number 3 is a waiver for not providing roof drain discharge directly on the surface and instead connecting them into storm sewer systems. We view this as a safety issue. The intent of that ordinance is more for like a residential type of development where you would want to have a roof drain discharge at grade into a grass area or some sort. But in this case, we have pavement areas walking areas surrounding the entirety of this proposed building, and having a surface runoff connected at grade, especially in freezing conditions, around this time of year, could create a slipping and tripping hazard. So for that reason, we just are proposing to connect the roof drains directly into the collection system, which would be a more direct path to get it off of the site, as opposed to sheet flowing over the surface.
And to that point, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
And that was part of what worried me. I understand that we don't want it to harm pedestrians and other folks, but by the same token, by putting it into the system, we're still adding to the burden of the stormwater structures and downstream. So this is not a trivial size. We're talking over 4,000 square feet that is different from what was there before. So again, I think it adds to the overall burden of the township. It's one that we're trying to mitigate. And so again, it would call for in lieu of considerations.
Okay, Mr. Phillips, if you want to add, from your engineering perspective and stormwater management perspective, as these questions come up, besides, the proposal, I'd like to, you to reassure us that in fact, much of this has already been in the consideration set, in the discussions that have been had with staff.
It has, Commissioner, and I've also discussed this with the applicant, and I support this specific waiver. And in fact, it was generated, I believe, at one of the early meetings we had of our suggestion that they do this in order to eliminate any type of icing or any dangerous condition around the new facility, since there'll be pedestrians in that area. And to Commissioner Rappaport's point, this is not providing any more additional stormwater than is what is currently on the site now. And actually, it's a net reduction due to the increase in the pervious surfaces that are being placed around the bank area, and will actually result in a lower amount of runoff from this site from what takes place currently.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. So,
Sure.
Mr. Landau, if you can, keep going and keep it brief.
Yes, so number 4 is for permitting a fence or wall to be proposed around an electrical transformer. If I may, I'm going to go to one of the plans quickly. The electrical transformer for this, let me go to this plan. You could see where my cursor is hovering right here, this is the letter T. That's where the existing transformer is. It's the most logical place to propose that, which is kind of in a highly trafficked area, at least on both sides of it, with folks coming in and out and utilizing the driveways. So putting some sort of vertical impedance in addition to what's already there is what we view as a potential sightline conflict, and we want people to be able to see through that.
Will that also be well marked?
Oh yes, there'll be bollards surrounding it, and you won't be able to mistake it, but we also don't want it to be a visual barrier any more than it already would be.
Okay, thank you. Go to the next.
Number 5 is for greater than 100,000 lumens per acre of improved hardscape area. This is a specific result of a bank type of use, a financial institution where excess lighting in and around ATM areas is actually required for certain banks and their operation for safety purposes. So we are proposing a waiver for that.
Okay.
Number 6 is to permit fewer than the required number of street trees, and this one is more in terms of the location of those trees. So we are required to provide 4 total street trees along this portion of the frontage. We're not providing them along the frontage itself due to sightline and tenant restriction, I guess contractually tenant restrictions in the shopping center. However, we are putting those 4 trees in additional elsewhere on site in places that the Shade Tree Advisory Commission has suggested. So we worked through that with them specifically.
Seems a reasonable accommodation.
Yeah.
Next.
Next is to permit preliminary and final plan submission concurrently. So that's we're coming in here for a preliminary and final. We know what we want to build here, and we have final design information for all of it. So just want to save everyone the time if possible. Number 8 is to allow less than 162 square feet of planting area along parking aisles, and that specific location is on the north side of the proposed facility, where you have some of these landscape end islands. Each of these are slightly less than the 162 square feet, and the reason it is not larger is to try to try to maintain as many ideal parking spaces for the shopping center as possible. So these spaces are premier stalls for some of the tenants just off the page in the interior of the shopping center. And it was a request of the property owner to maintain as many of those as possible. So
how many square feet does that accommodation require?
So we would need to lose approximately 4 additional parking stalls in order to meet that requirement.
Okay. All right. Move on.
2 more here. The number 9 is to not require a transportation impact study. The bank facility and the fact that there's already an ATM there, they're very low impact uses, especially these days where most folks are doing their banking online. So the anticipated delta in trips is generally negligible compared to the shopping center and the access that surrounds it. And I believe this was supported by the township traffic engineer as well.
And the last? Or is that not relevant?
I saw Henry.
Yeah, just real quick. I'm not sure if that was supported by the traffic engineer. Anton is on. If you could comment on that real briefly.
Yes, sure. It's Anton. Yeah, it's the traffic impact study. I don't think it's necessarily needed because it's located within an existing shopping center. And it's accommodated and wouldn't show significant changes along the access. So I don't think it's needed, but I think we'd recommend considerations for the waiver.
Anton, given its proximity to the Chick-fil-A and that kind of thing, I'm just wondering if there could be potential conflict or additional traffic that's going to represent some incremental concern.
Or like internal with that interaction between the 2 driveways. Yeah, there could be some interaction there, but I don't think it's significant enough to justify the impact study, because typically you're talking about impact studies, you're talking about level of service, and I don't think you would see a significant drop in the level of service.
Okay, that seems reasonable.
And I think, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Henry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think Anton, you had maybe recommended a fee in lieu of. I'm not sure if that's still.
Yeah, that's what's in the report. Pay in lieu of the traffic study. But I was going to get to that in a few minutes. So are we finished the 10 waivers?
There is one last one
Okay.
on here, which is to not require wheel stops, and I believe that was an item in Mr. Cooner's letter as well.
Yeah, it was.
We generally prefer not to provide wheel stops because over time and a lot of years of seeing them in action is we've seen them be used more as ramps for cars that can accidentally hit the gas instead of the brake and actually mount a curb and get into the sidewalk area. So that's just for safety purposes. We always request that if it is a requirement. If the township is going to require it and would prefer that condition, obviously, we would comply with that, but our general approach is for that to be a safer condition without wheel stops. So again, we're open to the idea, but it was our suggestion to not have them.
Yeah,
I believe the existing parking lot does not have wheel stops currently, or if they do, it's minimal.
I guess the only concern we had is, Matt, if you can go to the
It was right up,
building.
the parking was right up against the walkway for the people.
Correct. That's exactly.
And
It's not
that's what
often you
the
see cars
concern
go
was.
over the sidewalk when they park, restricting the park.
Right.
So that's the concern.
Understood. And we have full height curb there, and we do have a 6-foot wide sidewalk there specifically to allow for a little bit of a vehicle overhang and still have a passable walking lane. But you know, again, if that is a preference and a condition of the approval, we'd be happy to do that. But we would want that to be specified by the township in writing that they would prefer that over not having them, just so you know we're all clear on the who requested that improvement.
Commissioner Lewis, are you satisfied with those?
My question at this point would be, are there any concerns from the township that the commissioners should be aware of as it relates to these 10 waiver requests?
Henry, Roger?
I have no objections to the waivers as they're stated.
No.
Okay.
No objections either.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions from?
Yeah, I want to quickly go over the traffic engineering review by Bowman. Just get a quick update on our thoughts on the 6 items, specifically the recommendations. I think we can go through them pretty quick.
Go ahead.
Henry, do you have that report? It was to you.
I think I can pull it open if it's easier for you, Henry.
From Mr. Kuhner, if I pronounced his name correctly.
Yep.
If not, I apologize.
Yeah, would you like me to go through the comments?
Yes, please. Thanks.
Sure.
Matt.
The first one is one Matt went over. I think it was waiver number 9 in regards to the traffic impact study. Number 2 is in regards to waiver number 10 about the wheel stops that we just mentioned.
Can you hold up a moment? So when you say consider a fee in lieu of the traffic study, what does that fee look like? Have we ever implemented such a thing? Is there a standing fee? Somebody talk to me in that regard.
In my experience, it's comparable to what it would be to prepare the study.
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, if it's something the township would consider, it's something we could work out what that is based on their experience work with the applicant.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we would have no objection to that, assuming it would be comparable to a traditional traffic impact fee. I know there are townships out there that have very high traffic impact fees. So I think we'd be happy with that as a condition of any of your recommendations. You know, so long as we're willing to work on the fee with Mr. Kuhner and his office.
Yep.
To something that's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Number 2.
Number 2 is the wheel stops. It was the
Yes.
waiver number 10.
Yep.
Number 3 is in regards, just make sure the fire marshal has seen it.
Yeah, has he weighed in on that? Has Scott seen the traffic conditions? Will emergency vehicles be able to get in and out of the mall at that entrance, or we don't know yet?
Scott had a chance to take a look at this. Oh, I'm sorry. He's on. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I've had it. Thank you. I've looked at it. I'm not seeing any issues right away.
Okay.
Again, as it progresses, if I see something, I'm going to reach out and let everybody know what it is, and we'll get it corrected.
Thank you. Number 4.
Number 4, we had a comment in our first review letter that the drive-through queuing data should be provided, and that engineer have responded that they would provide it in testimony. We're asking that to also be provided in correspondence to the township. You know, just make sure that vehicles, based on their data, doesn't queue out of what they have in the storage.
Yeah, and we can do that without any issue. We'll just have to find a comparable location size and provide you that data. yeah, well, we can work with the applicant to do that.
Yeah, there's an uptick, based on the data, there's an uptick in traffic on Saturday. Is that correct? Based on what I read? I think 70 visits on a Saturday.
Oh, you're referring to the anticipated trip generation?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all taken from the ITE manual, traffic engineering manual, which just projects a typical type of use. So that's a industry standard expectation for a bank.
Okay.
Not
Right.
necessarily guaranteed, but
Okay.
But yes.
Yeah, and both drive through and walk up.
Okay.
Number 5 is just a statement about just ensuring everything's curb ramps and pedestrian routes are met to ADA standards. And then the number 6, just asking for a response letter.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Any other questions or comments from members of the board?
Yeah.
Commissioner Rappaport.
Yeah, so I just want to go back to number 8, I'm not sure I understand then with the answer that we got. We're approximately 4 parking stalls short of the greenscaping that needs the permeable greenscaping that our ordinance requires, or you're putting that elsewhere in the shopping center. I didn't understand your answer.
Yeah, here, I'll reshare the screen just to have a visual. So the requirement is for all landscaped areas within a parking field, such as a curbed end island, to be a minimum of 162 square feet. We are less than that. I want to say these are about 80 or 90 square feet. So in order to meet that requirement, we would need to enlarge them, and by doing so, we would lose 1, 2, 3, 4 parking spaces in these 2 double rows of parking, because the parking stalls would then not be large enough to be a compliant parking stall.
Yeah, I understood that.
Okay.
I didn't understand if you plan to make up for that somewhere else.
Oh, I see. So the current proposal is
the
I
waiver.
guess technically we are providing that area elsewhere based on the reduction of impervious surface that is already proposed. So actually it might help if I go to the landscape plan. Bear with me for 1 second. So you could see, I guess you can see it on this plan. There are some colors on here. Maybe this is a better view. Oh, my automatic light went off. You can see some of the planting areas that are proposed, which are not currently existing. You can see underneath in the
but I'm talking about
shaded aerial. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The net amount. I'm just trying to save us some time. It sounds like the net amount is you're still asking for a waiver because you're short of green space relative to our ordinance.
And the waiver is required because the area specific to the parking areas is smaller than what is stated in the code. It's not an overall difference in planted areas on the site. It's specific. The code is specific to the parking islands. And
okay, but are we gaining or losing green space as a total result of this development?
You're gaining substantial green space as a result of this development from what is there now.
Okay. And then the other question still remaining is, I'm not sure I understand safety aspects of wheel stops, because my understanding of a wheel stop is that it's some kind of concrete slab that's about 6 inches high that helps prevent the tires from going further into the sidewalk or the building than that would permit. And I'm not sure I understand how we're justifying the safety piece of that.
Yeah, and this is really just something that we've we've seen over time that the wheel stops actually don't tend to function like they're supposed to, where over time they degrade a little bit, they get chipped and weathered and cracked. It is a maintenance headache and a tripping hazard, but that's kind of besides the point. It also, over time, a wheel can just as easily go over a wheel stop as it can a curb generally. So again, from an engineering perspective, if it's a request of the township and you'd prefer us to meet the code requirement, I think we'd be happy to do that as long as that is, clearly stated in the conditions. But our suggestion is to not have them for the reasons I mentioned, and and we can follow your lead. But that is generally the
So
reason.
that's something we can decide. I'm not sure that we need to make that decision tonight, right?
Well,
We
we do
do.
in terms of the waiver. So let me ask,
Okay.
I think I'd feel better than with two things between now and the legislative meeting. I think I'd like to check in with our police and highway safety as to what they would recommend. And number two, if we don't do the wheel stops, it seems to me like that would be something that should go in with 9, the fee in lieu of, in case we have other issues down the pike. So that would be my thought. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of the board?
I do.
Go ahead.
Matt, is it possible, and Roger, is it possible? I understand wheel stops are not used as much and seen as a bit kind of, I guess, outdated. But there are, I guess, other options. For instance, can you do bollards there, especially in front of what might be a sidewalk, or is that an option that can provide some sort of protection from cars heading into that sidewalk, or is that not something that you use either?
Definitely bollards are preferable over a wheel stop. In a case like this, putting a bollard, and actually we have a couple proposed for the handicap stalls here. The only concern I would have is by the time you put one at the end of each parking stall, then a car actually isn't able to overhang a little bit. And if a certain customer has a large truck or something, then the actual parking stalls might need to even be larger than 18 feet, which is the code required minimum. So
gotcha. Okay.
I don't believe that they're necessary, but that's my opinion as an engineer, and obviously, Mr. Phillips, we can work with him on that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, Commissioner, this is Lori Stopra. Commissioner Rappaport, I appreciate your comments on the wheel stops, but they do create a tripping hazard and a greater concern for people trying to walk around them and into them and over them, and creates a lot more liability issues and for people to get hurt than if we just leave the curb. And as Matt said, the sidewalk is 6 feet in that area, 6 feet wide. So that gives plenty. If a car bumper goes over a little bit, there's still plenty of room for a pedestrian, someone in a wheelchair to walk down safely. There's just many incidents and problems that we have found, not just at Cedarbrook, because all of them, we no longer have any at Cedarbrook and have not for many years, but at other shopping centers that we own as well.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just clarify then, how high is the curb and the sidewalk from the parking?
The curb reveal is 6 inches.
How high is a bumper stop, Matt?
About the same, 4 to 6 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really accomplished a similar goal. The wheel stops were once thought to just have that wheel like slowly bump into it sooner, but
right.
If
now with the way cars are designed, you
Yeah.
have cars that have a lower reveal in the front, their bumpers hit them, it rips the bumpers off of cars because people don't realize they're there, scrapes them, which just initiates many more issues on top of just the safety of people walking around them and tripping. Because when you set them in a parking space, you generally set them how many inches in front of the curb, face of curb to
Probably-
face of.
Yeah, about 2 feet, maybe 1.5 feet. Yeah.
So what's the
So,
recommendation? What's the recommendation to minimize the susceptibility to people getting hurt? What's the recommendation? If it's not
So I guess I have a suggestion, Commissioner, since I think it's our comment. I think the main concern is just making sure we have enough walking space if cars overhang. And I think it's primarily want to make sure wheelchairs can get by. So what if we just widen that section of sidewalk between the entranceway to the handicap spots, not the whole length?
Yeah, yeah, we can go.
Yeah,
to
make
8
that wider,
feet.
make that
Yeah.
7 feet, just to make sure we get a 4-foot par. You know, if they hang over 2 feet two or more, you know, that gives us that. And I think I'd be okay with the, you know, not requesting the wheel stops and the waiver for the other ones because people can walk around. There should be sufficient space, as you're saying, with the 6-foot.
Seems reasonable. So may I close comment and make a
Please.
recommendation that that Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution granting conditional approval and associated waiver for the preliminary final land development application for the Cedarbrook Shopping Plaza located at 1000 South Easton Road for that construction with conditions that reflect our engineering, traffic, and police input on those on the legislative session final approval of the CTDA. Does that make sense to everybody? Commissioner Lewis?
No, what about waiver number 10? Should that be a condition? Also widening the sidewalk?
Yeah, I think with what I think was Mr. Cooner that just recommended that. So I believe that
Yes.
with all the input received here, that should be reflected in the final recommendation at the legislative session.
If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, I would just ask that our solicitor weigh in on this to make sure that we have all the conditions.
Agreed.
for
Agreed,
the
Commissioner
legislative
Lewis.
meeting.
So I think
So
we have that
Commissioners,
as a
what-
conditional approval.
Sure. So Commissioners, what I'm hearing, the conditions would be compliance with the township engineer's review comments, compliance with the township traffic engineer comments with the caveat that Mr. Cooner just outlined verbally with respect to widening of the sidewalks. And then also we would build in language regarding the placement of the trees as per the discussion with the Shade Tree Advisory Commission.
Great. Does that fit with everybody's understanding? So with that, I'll move that with those conditions that we approve CTDA number 2406 to, for the final approval at the legislative session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? None? Okay, let's move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you all for your
Appreciate,
time.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Item B, consider recommending the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution granting conditional approval and associated waivers for a preliminary final land development application, CTDA number 24-05 for the Cheltenham High School Football Stadium at 500 Rice's Mill Road, Wyncote, PA, involving improvements in the high school stadium with an artificial turf field and an infiltration bed beneath, addition of sand pits for long jump, surfaces for high jump and pole vault functionalities, plus other field events, expansion of the bleachers for a total of 2,916 seats to accommodate typical existing home and visiting crowd attendance, a structure, it's getting long-winded, to replace an entry gate, concession stand and restroom facilities, and new fencing. There is a link. And I guess we'll start with you, Henry, on this one.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this has gone through an extensive review process by all our committees. For some, they had to come back twice for additional consideration, but staff is generally in favor of the of the approval recommendation for approval, subject to accommodating of the waivers as well that they will be requesting. And Mr. Moyer is available to share briefly on the plan and what they're proposing.
Go ahead, Mr. Moyer.
Yes. So if you'd like me to share my screen.
Sure.
I need that turned on, please.
Allison, could we turn on Mr. Screen sharing for Mr. Moyer?
Okay. Right screen on or not? You're looking at the Google Earth?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the existing field, and by the way, my name's Dane Moyer. I'm with Bursich Associates. I'm the civil engineering firm for this project. Also on with me tonight is Josh Swigert with the school district. He's the director of business development. So as you see the existing field, what's being proposed is, as was mentioned, to change the grass into a synthetic field, to update it, and then expand the track, adding 2 more lanes. The existing bleachers that are here are not adequate to house the crowds that they will get on certain events. So just from a visual, the existing field lights that are in will stay, and that's where we're planning on adding turf, or I'm sorry, the new bleachers. And then this existing concession stand is going to be removed. So what I'll show you now, are you looking at a rendering right now? That's what you're looking at. So the proposed project is going to have this new field house, or not field house, excuse me, concession stand and increased restrooms. And then the blue area is where the new bleachers will be. And obviously the track and field stay where they're at. The stormwater proposal for this is all underneath the field, all within the synthetic field area. There'll be 2.5 feet of stone underneath, and that's how the stormwater is going to be addressed. The intent of the project, as I mentioned, is to improve the field, to also improve security getting into the stadium, as well as some crowd control. It's going to double approximately the amount of seating area for the crowd. And then we have gone through, the Shade Tree Commission has made some comments where we've revised that, and also we've had the approval of your Planning Commission. So without continuing, I'm here for questions, or if there's further clarification on anything, I'm happy to answer.
Commissioner Norris, I see that hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick question. Does this impact the tennis courts at all?
It does not. So
okay. Thank you.
There's a retaining wall that all the work will be staying on the field side of that.
Go for
it. Mr. Moore, this is a chair. I have a question. Given recent history of certain incidents that have occurred in other athletic fields, not just ours, I'm wondering if there is additional security consideration from where there's been consultation with either our police department or other public safety and emergency management to be able to anticipate and manage should there, God forbid, be any kind of event, but more importantly, to preempt those. So I'm wondering if in this there is design or additional monitoring security things that would enable some of those things to be addressed beforehand.
So I don't know if, Josh, if you're available to comment on any of that. I do know the security has been a main focus, so there's going to be cameras installed and better communication abilities, and the fence that is being put around crowd control was one of the main concerns. I do know they've also communicated with emergency services and have had some input on that.
Yeah, so along that line, if there are cameras, what are the provisions for those cameras to be monitored? Josh, if you're there and you want to just address that a little bit? I'm sure that's been discussed.
Yes, so just like the rest of the high school site, we have most of the site cambered. That would include the new stadium project. Also, we met with our security team internally. One of the issues with the stadium is there's lack of seating, lack of places for spectators to go other than to gather in crowds around the concession stand area. So by adding the additional seating, by adding fencing to guide crowds and crowd control, and by better focusing the entry point at the entry gate with the new gatehouse, we hope to mitigate some of the safety factors that exist at the stadium.
So during an event, will there be active monitoring of those security cameras?
So,
and if you can't answer that, is that something that should become incorporated in the, just in the issue of security and policing? Because having those cameras is fabulous. We have cameras on all of our school buses, and we average between 40 and 50 violations a day because, people are not really thoughtful or considerate. So I'm just anticipating, with this progression and clearly this development, all positive. But I think we want to be, as much as we can to preempt the potential risk.
yes, that's certainly something we can take to our safety coordinator as part of his safety plan for game nights. So I will certainly bring that back to him.
Thank you. Any other Commissioner Armand?
I think Commissioner Brockington had his hand up before me.
I can't see everybody, so
okay.
Commissioner Brockington.
Yes, thank you. Question, I have two. I know you're upgrading the football field to turf, which I'm very happy that we're doing that. What about the track? Is the track going to be upgraded, or that's just going to stay the same?
So the track will be a combination of things. The existing surface is going to be removed.
Oh, great.
Widened, and then a new surface put down.
The new surface is going down?
Yeah. Okay,
great. And my second question is, I know there's a lot of lighting on the field, of course, for the players. What about the perimeter, which is part of the safety issue? There are spots where there was, there wasn't too much lighting. So will there be additional lighting put in certain sections?
Yes. So the drawing that I'm showing here is the lighting plan. So all these circles, while maybe not real clear what it means, there's light facilities all along where pedestrians would go up to the bleachers.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that one little section is where the kids kind of hang out, and there's no, I think they had a portable light there before.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Brockington.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Armand, may I call on you now?
You may. Thank you. Mr. Moyer, thank you for your presentation. Mr. Swiger as well. As someone who has almost fallen through those bleachers, I'm very glad that they're going to be replaced. But to the more mundane, I couldn't quite tell, and we didn't talk about it. Are there waivers that you're seeking as part of this project? And could we just sort of quickly, and I'm not going to ask you to go through every single one of them because I don't think it's necessary. but perhaps you can just give us a quick overview, and Roger, you could weigh in as to what your view is of these waivers.
Sure. So the waivers, we're asking for 5. The preliminary final being done is one thing, and then I would say the rest of them are about the scope of the project for the size of the overall track. So we're not doing a complete boundary survey, as we're really contained within where the work has already been improved. Deed restrictions from a title report because we're working within that same area. An open space requirement, which it's already sort of a public facility, not sort of, it is a public facility that's being used, and landscaping buffers around the entire tract. So we are doing new landscaping, but not considering doing it around the entire school.
And that's the one I wanted to focus on. That landscaping will be on the road side and not on the school side. Is that my understanding?
So our landscape
is my understanding correct, I should say.
Let me go to the revised landscape plan. So we did, from the shade tree advisory, we moved some trees. We're adding trees a little bit along the road, between the baseball field and the football stadium on the entrance, and then some additional locations along Panther Road and within the parking of the school.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Those are all the questions I had. Thank you, Mr. Moyer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the board?
Hey, Mr. Chair, real quick, just
Yeah.
a question. If this goes through, I just have a question. Will the kids be playing there for this coming fall, or will they lose a season?
You're recording me right now. You want me to answer that question? So the goals of this is to go to construction during this summer and be ready for football in next season.
2025. 2025.
Yes.
September
2025.
2025. Okay. We got you on
Great.
recording. We recorded.
There you go. So I will close comment and move that we consider recommending the Board of Commissioners adopt resolution CTDA number 2405 for the Cheltenham High School Football Stadium at 500 Rice's Mill Road with the listed improvements. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
None. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
We're
your
good.
time.
Moving
Thank
on
you.
to item C. Consider recommending the Board of Commissioners approve a contract to Bowman on a lump sum basis in the amount of $328,000 for the design, engineering, and construction services on the Laurel Avenue Bridge Superstructure Replacement Project. There is an attachment, and I guess that goes back to you, Henry, on this?
No,
No.
sorry.
Does that go to Mr. Stucker?
These would be the recently
thank you.
in October, I believe it was October or November, we were awarded a grant for a municipal bridge retro reimbursement program to replace the superstructure of the Laurel Ave Bridge. Bridge currently has a weight restriction of 15 tons on it, and it is deteriorating. So this would this gets the ball rolling on the engineering services. I believe Anton's on. I believe he's engineering, looking at about 18 months. We have a project completion date of August 1st, 2028. So the sooner we can get this going with the engineering, the better.
And I believe that has a $1.6 million grant associated with it. So that the 328,000 is part of that. Are we responsible for any percentage of that total fee?
Yes, this would be an 80-20 grant.
Okay.
Responsible for 20%
That's fine.
at the completion of the project.
So if the 1.6 million is the grant, that means that we have about $320,000 obligation. Does that mean that the 328 is our piece of it?
I guess that's one way of looking at it. But
All right,
it's
it is one
overall,
way of looking
the
at it.
project has to be completed, and then once we have to put all the money out front.
Right.
And then upon completion, we would get 80% of all of our costs back.
Okay. Thank you, Bo. Any questions or comments from members of the board? I see none, so I will move for authorization of a contract to Bowman in the lump sum of $328,000 for the design, engineering, construction, Laurel Avenue Bridge Superstructure Replacement. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, move on. Thank you. Item D, consider recommending the Board of Commissioners approve a contract to Bowman on a time and materials basis in the amount of $27,650 for the design, engineering, and construction services on the Chelten Hills Drive Pedestrian Improvements Project. Is that back to you, Bo?
I'll answer that.
Oh, Joe.
Yeah, this is
Joe, you snuck in.
We're
Okay.
tag teaming it tonight.
All right.
Yeah, so this is a continuation of the preliminary design that was done by Bowman last year. And it was in my previous reports, and the board wished to move forward with the final design and engineering for the crosswalk on Chelten Hills Drive. So this would finish that process all the way. That amount would finish for Bowman all the way through the project.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the board? I see none, so I will move forward on recommending that the 27,650 for design, engineering, construction services on the Cheltenham Drive pedestrian improvement project be authorized. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Great. Item E, consider recommending the Board of Commissioners approve a contract to Bowman for times and material up to $23,000 for construction services on the Montgomery Avenue, Mill Road, Surrey Road, Windsor Avenue intersection improvement project. Joe or Bo?
Same thing. So that project did go out to bid last month. It will close bid in about 12 days. And so this will include the review of all the submitted bids, making sure all the paperwork is correct, and then overseeing the inspections for the project and the final paperwork with the state.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the board? So I will move. Commissioner
as long
Rappaport,
as
how
we
dare
correct-
you interrupt my speed approval?
Just get rid of that extra zero. It's very disturbing.
Okay.
I
I
see.
did say 23,000.
You said it, but it's not in writing, so.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, is that 23,000 or is it 230?
23,000.
Thank you, Joe. All right. Somebody's going for extra zeros. So I'll move for authorization as well. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. No, any nays? No. Item F, consider recommending the Board of Commissioners authorize advertisement of an ordinance amending chapter 290-15 to 290-38 to comply with regulatory requirements as implemented through the township's municipal separate sewer system, the MS4 permit for stormwater discharges under the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, which is the NPDES program. There is an attachment. I'll wait for somebody to volunteer to clarify this one. So, Ms. Brinker, there you go. Thank you.
Yes,
Everybody's
thank you.
weighing in tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to combine items F and G. They both pertain to our stormwater ordinances. That way you don't have to read both of them all. One of the ordinances is for the Tacony Frankfurt Creek watershed, and the other one is for the Wissahickon. DEP periodically comes out with new requirements that we need to ensure that we adhere to. These updates is just for the prohibitions section, and they're consistent with all the DEP regulations. They're just minor adjustments, but they will make us in compliance.
So does this meet some of the remaining obstacles for us with the DEP concerning, our pollution management, as well as some of the other issues that have held us back?
Yes, this is part of the MS4 permit, your illicit discharge sections that you need to comply with as part of the permit. This helps regulate stormwater discharges, what is or isn't allowed.
Okay, so I'm going to read item G as well. Consider recommending the Board of Commissioners authorize advertisement of an ordinance amending Chapter 291 Wissahickon Creek Watershed Stormwater Management Ordinance, Article 8, Prohibitions, Sections 291 to -801 to 291-803 to comply with regulatory requirements as implemented through the township's municipal separate storm sewer system, that's the MS4 permit, for stormwater discharges under the NPDES program, and that is part of the attachment. So those two under your purview, Ms. Brinker. I'll ask for any questions or comments from members of the board. I see none, so I will move for authorization of the advertisement of the two ordinances, items F and G. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Good. That's that didn't deny me some quickness. Okay, item H. Consider recommending the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution entering into a reimbursement agreement with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation as a representative of the Federal Highway Administration for the replacement of the bridge on Tookenny Creek Parkway over Tookenny Creek. And is that the bridge? Is that the bridge at the Borough Road intersection or Jenkintown intersection? I can get clarification on that.
I believe it's Jenkintown intersection.
It's a Jenkintown intersection? Okay. Okay. And who might weigh in on that if you want? Now, I know this is Ms. Elliott and not Mr. Elliott, as in some of the comments that were in some of the Bowman documents. So we're correcting that publicly.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I'll start and Sam can finish. So this is a bridge project that we've been working on for quite some time. It is on the Transportation Improvement Plan program. So there is a reimbursement process. So this is basically just commemorating that deal so that we can move forward in the project. And I know Sam's been working closely with the engineer that's been assigned to this. I don't know if you can share any of the timeline going forward for this. It's definitely moving a little bit faster than it has in the past. So we're excited about that.
Yes, we are going to be renewing the reimbursement agreement with PennDOT. This time around, though, we received funds through the federal aid highway as well. So it will be 80% federal, 15% state, and the township will be responsible for 5% of the pre-construction cost.
Who negotiated that? We should do that for all of our projects moving forward. Excellent. Any questions or comments from members of the board? I see none, so I will move for the recommendation of the resolution entering into that reimbursement agreement with PennDOT for the replacement of the bridge on Tookenny Creek Parkway at Jenkintown Road. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. I'm going to add an item I know this has been a long public works, but we gave permission for the Environmental Advisory Council to give us a brief presentation on the disposable plastics ordinance, which they're proposing. It is similar in nature to the single-use plastic bag, and so I've given them permission for a quick presentation from Jeff Bloud, who I believe is the assistant chairman of the Environmental Advisory Council. So if we can give him screen sharing capability, and I've asked him to keep it as brief as possible, and we can always carry through with this to next week's public affairs if we don't have adequate time to do the quick overview. Mr. Plow, are you there?
I am here. Thank you, Mitch, and thank you, everybody. Hopefully my screen is being shared.
It is.
I want to thank the commissioners, Mitch, staff for being here. We will be quick. My name is Jeff Plout. I'm here with Greta Bunin, who's chair of the EAC, and Karen Hansen. So also on the EAC, we've been working on a project for a couple of years to help the township move further towards reducing plastics in our systems, both physically as well as environmentally. And we want to introduce the concept of banning styrofoam food containers, plastic straw, restricting the use of straws and utensils. This will be quick. I've been asked to keep it brief. It is late, and I appreciate the time you've given us today. We have made major progress with the single-use plastic bag ban that went into effect last year, and I think the transition was smooth. We've had great cooperation from the business community. I think we can all agree that the township can see a difference, and we're not alone anymore. 33 other municipalities in the southeastern Pennsylvania have already started to implement plastic bag bans. What we would like to propose that the commissioners consider, and we look forward to advice as to how to move forward with this in the future, is to ban styrofoam takeout food and drink containers and restrict single-use plastic utensils and straws to request only. This is not new. Many municipalities have done this, including many in our area. They'll be part of this presentation that will mention specifics on this. There is also regulations and verbiage that townships in and around Cheltenham have, around Cheltenham and in Pennsylvania have implemented that we can review. Businesses don't suffer terribly, and it will help reduce plastic waste in our plastic recycling system, also in our trash system and in the environment. As we all know, or should know by now, plastics really don't decompose. They don't break down very easily, and they're also hard to recycle. Some plastics you can't recycle at all. That's one of the reasons we're urging a ban on the styrofoam food containers. And they're everywhere, as many of us have read recently, including in our brains. They break down into microplastics. And frankly, we don't know the impact of these plastics on our health, but suspicions are that it isn't good. So why shouldn't we ban styrofoam? First, why should we ban styrofoam? First of all, it can't be recycled. It breaks apart easily, and you can see it in and around the environment. It creates a litter problem, and it's a health hazard. Many alternatives to styrofoam exist. We want to restrict the distribution of plastic straws and utensils. They typically are only used once, if at all. They're very difficult to recycle. In fact, pretty much impossible. Most of the time, they're just thrown out in the trash. And they're frequently provided when they're not needed or even wanted. So the suggestion is going to be to make them available, but only on request. Karen, is this yours, or? I have colleagues who are going to share and try and break this up. I don't know.
Well, it's clear that we're not initiating this on our own, that we're not the innovator, but we recognize the need to do it. I think that's the important thing.
Right. So many Montgomery County townships have already done these things. Ambler, Montgomery, Narberth. We actually have a table that shows what townships have banned what, and we can share that. There are other southeastern Pennsylvania plastic ordinances that aren't necessarily in our immediate vicinity, but are nearby. We've also taken the time to, at the request of several commissioners, to visit a number of food service businesses to try and get a sense of what they think would be the impact on their businesses. And the results we've had after meeting with a little over 25 food service businesses is 52% use styrofoam, 80% straws, and 84% utensils. Wouldn't take long for them to use their styrofoam container inventory. And probably the most important part, 74% of the food service organizations we visited, including locally owned and some small chains in the area, would not foresee a hardship making these changes, or are already in compliance. And some even indicated that we're behind the times in the township.
We're at 5 minutes, Jeff. You got a wrap up slide?
That's pretty much it. We want to know what is the next step as far as the township is concerned.
We'll let you know. Thank you for that. And thank you. This, aligns with the single-use plastic bag thing. Commissioner Arman, I saw your hand raised briefly.
I know you're trying to wrap it up, but I just wanted to echo your thanks to Mr. Plowd and Ms. Hanson and Ms. Bunin. A great presentation. Certainly a worthwhile conversation. And in my view, I think the next steps would be for the EAC to propose to staff some ordinance language, so that it could be reviewed by our council and staff, and then presented to the board. Because the sooner we address this, the better. Frankly, the almost overnight, I know it wasn't overnight, but the overnight success of the plastic bag ban in terms of compliance, in terms of reduction in litter, was phenomenal in the township, and I would anticipate that this would be just as successful.
Commissioner Norris.
No, I was just applauding, Mike. That's a thumbs up. Thank you.
Okay. So Greta, Jeff, and the entire EAC, thank you so much for this. Appreciate it. And you now have a moving forward strategy. So let's close new business. It certainly has been extensive. And I will move to Citizens Forum. Is there anybody ambitious enough to stretch Public Works a little longer? I can't see everybody.
You have Rhonda with her hand up.
Rhonda?
Rhonda, you're muted.
Rhonda, are you there?
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Now
No, I'm not illiterate. Really quick, just to let everybody know, the PUC at 10 o'clock tomorrow via telecom, which I posted the link on the infrastructure page, will be making a decision and a final ruling on the aqua wastewater sewer rate increase.
Okay, and that's posted?
I posted it on the infrastructure page, and I posted the agenda item there also.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any additional comments for Citizens Forum?
Brad Pransky, Commissioner Pransky.
Commissioner always Pransky.
It's a fireside chats with Commissioner Pransky. You're muted, Brad.
Thank you. The man formerly known as, right? I just want to say, although it was about a day and a half ago when Amy Farrell made her presentation, good job, Mitch, always, as always. I was very heartened to hear about the progress they made as the man she used to work with. Thank you for the acknowledgement there, Jeff. And I'm looking forward to them getting forward, move forward come in the spring, because once that second tranche of money comes through, they'll be able to move to pretty much 100%, which is kind of exciting. And I'm going to stop now, Mitch, because we're all getting sleepy.
Hey, Mitch, Jeff Plout is next.
Mr. Plow.
Thanks, Mitch. I did not see the deer management report in the packet that was posted with the agenda. Maybe I missed it.
No, it wasn't posted, but we will make sure that it is.
Okay, thank you. I'd love a copy of that if someone could send it.
Oh, you just want, maybe you just want some of the meat that still is outstanding.
No, I want the deer gone. And
All
I
right.
want to thank everyone for doing this tonight. All the work you do is really outstanding and amazing. And I can't imagine you doing this 5 times a month or more.
Thank you.
My-
Any other questions or
Thanks,
comments
Jeff.
from the public for Citizens Forum for Public Works? Okay, I see none, so I'll move for adjournment of tonight's Public Work and today's and tomorrow's Public Works session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.